Tami here. Today let's talk about The Sword of Kaigen by Wang. This book was published independently in 2018, and although it won the hearts of many fantasy readers, here in Brazil, where I live, it hasn't been published and we don't have much talk about it either, which wise took me a while to get around and read it. This is the first review of this channel, so let's see how I go. This book was a pick of my Catarse members. Catarse is a platform like Patreon that we have here in Brazil, and the members of my highest tier can pick a book for me to read. The Sword of Kaigen tells the story of the Matsuda family and the place where they live, high up in the mountains, on the edge of the Kaigenese Empire. The Kusanagi Peninsula is the home of the most powerful warriors of this empire, capable of inhuman things like summoning ice swords, making the sea rise, or controlling the flow of the blood. For many years, they were the empire's greatest shield against their enemies, and that's why they are called the Sword of Kaigen. We will be following 2 points of view in this book. The first one is Mamoru's. He is a 14-year-old kid. He's one of the heirs of the Matsuda family. He didn't summon his ice sword yet, but he is working very hard to achieve this feat and bring honor to his family and to his father. And the other point of view is Misaki. Misaki is the mother of Mamoru, married into the Matsuda family, and now has to fulfill what's expected of her as a wife in this powerful legacy. Something important about Misaki is that she lived a life outside this place before she married, but she cannot talk about this period of time because she was forbidden to do so by her husband. And it's exactly when the outside world comes knocking on the door of this place that a few things start to come into perspective. We're gonna have the arrival of a new boy here. He's gonna come with his dad, who is installing a communications tower to improve the contact of this place with the rest of the world. And this boy will be Mamoru's classmate. And he will be very impressed in how the story is told in school and what the people who live in this place believe. It's as if this place lived in a bubble where many things are old-fashioned and stories are told to exalt these warriors, but sometimes those stories are not based on the truth. And as this boy starts to expose all the things that doesn't make sense in all those stories that are being told, with what he knows of the real world, Mamoru will start to question if anything that he knows, believes, and the rules which everyone lives here make any sense. And what's the role that the empire plays here in how these stories are told? And as I already told you, Mamoru's mother, Misaki, had already the opportunity to see the world behind this fog, and seeing her son in this conflict will bring back a few memories, as well as her desire to guide him through all the things she knows. And although it has been many years since the last time that the peninsula was last attacked, there is a threat looming here that will test not only the skills of these warriors, but also their loyalty and what they believe in. The first thing that I want to emphasize here is that I really enjoyed this read, especially because of the choices of POVs and the pacing of the story, which is a little bit different than we usually find in a fantasy. The choice of point of view brings an interesting perspective, and despite seeming a bit commonplace at first, managed to take the story to different places than usual, with characters that have the same profile. Mamoru, for example, starts as a loyal boy. He is concerned about his family, the legacy of the Matsuda name, and he's very reluctant to accept that what was told to him his entire life cannot be truth, and that all the story of his family and that the story of these warriors may not be 100% real. But this aspect changes when he is confronted with facts or the story is being told to him by someone that he trusts. This aspect, however, does not alter his sense of loyalty or duty with his family or the duty of protecting these people that live here. Misaki, on the other hand, is a fascinating character. I spent the entire reading with a lot of questions about her in my mind. Like, what was she doing here? Why did she give up on her freer life to marry into this family? Why she chose this family? Did she kept secrets? What she saw in the world who make her come back and stay in this isolated place? And also how she saw things now, like how she felt about all of what was happening and this knowledge that things are not told as it should. And little by little, the story answered all my questions and wove together a complex character who was, in the same time, very simple on her desires. Regarding the progress of the narrative, the fact that we have a long and important conflict happening very early in the story caught me off guard. There are several pages of action scenes which I really enjoyed, and I think illustrated very well how the power of these warriors worked, how they wielded all of this power, this magic, the swords, as well as some war weapons that came from the enemy. And there's something that happens in this part of the story that I wasn't expecting either, and was an interesting surprise. I expected that the author somehow went back to this point to try to change a little bit of how we saw this scene, this fact, but she didn't, and I enjoy it even more. And after this moment, which was right past the middle of the book, I started wondering how the rest of the story would progress, what arguments would the author work, and how she would connect this conflict with all of the things that we learn about the things that are not being told here. Here, I think was interesting to realize that this wasn't going to be a story about a revolution, but was actually about survival. This may be a little frustrating for a few readers, but at the same time, it's also something more realistic and gives us the opportunity to think a little bit more about how the political systems work and how things usually happens in a fantasy book. In that political sense, how we often submit to things regardless of our will. The Sword of Kaigen is a story that explores the question of loyalty, the preservation of customs, and the power of family legacy. And this contrasts with the technology that we see here, because there are video games, there are screens, which at a first glance we wouldn't expect for this world or for a fantasy in this format. And since they are kind of isolated here, and the first glimpse that we have to this world and to this place, it reflects something of an older time. When this show up at the story, I found very interesting, even that it's something that's not quite explored during the narrative. However, even though I really enjoyed the book, two things didn't work so well for me. The first is a constant response to other characters. So when we had a dialogue, it doesn't matter if it's a speech, or if it's an order, a request, or if the character is just talking about things that happened, the other person, the person what the conversation was direct, it always responded with a question. So the book is full of whats. I've been told that this is very common in anime, but for me it was quite annoying here, and I don't think it fit the hierarchy that we have here in the natural position of the characters in the story. I will try to give you guys an example. The characters are in the middle of a conflict. It's a war situation. You need to think quickly and act the same way. And then you have in front of you highest ranking person of this place. And you are a soldier, or you don't even have the opportunity of being in the presence of that person because that person is so important. And then that person tells you to gather everyone together and take them to a safe place. You know the context. You know what's happening. You know the motive. But then instead of just doing what was asked of you, you just look to this person who's very powerful and says, "What?" The characters do that all the time in this book. So, I don't know. each 10 dialogues, 7 has some moment where one character looks to the other and says, "What?" And from the middle of the book, it really became an issue for me. The other thing that I didn't find so interesting was the opening at the end of the book for a new conflict. From what I understood, this book was supposed to be part of a series. There are other stories listed in the same world, and I think maybe the author intended to write more in this world and keep going with the story, but that didn't happen. I'm not sure if it will happen. We have a lot of pages here at the end of the book building up something that's not gonna have a continuation. So I don't think it made much sense. And because the conflict itself doesn't seem as interesting as the one in this first book, I didn't care much about this new setup. But apart from that, it was a very good reading experience. The author has a new release from last year, 2023. It's called Blood Over Bright Haven, and I'm definitely gonna read as soon as possible. And I think that the message that remains from the Sword of Kaigen is that there is no legacy strong enough that will survive without truth and knowledge being protected. And that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this review. And if you have a suggestion for another book you want to see me talking about, let me know in the comments. If you haven't subscribed yet, I invite you to do so. This is my English channel where I'm learning and trying to improve my speaking and vocabulary. And my main channel in Portuguese is linked in the description box. See you guys in the next video. Bye!